You are listening to the Saber Coach Kate podcast, where I highlight the great thinkers, athletes, and coaches in the dynamic sport of Olympic fencing.
Guard. Well,
Nikki Franke began her illustrious fencing career her last year in high school. She really enjoyed the combative mental aspect of it and threw herself in wholeheartedly. She attended Brooklyn College and trained with Denise O'Connor. Eventually, the two became Olympic teammates. Desirous of a graduate degree, she went to Temple University to serve as the TA of fencing, thanks to prodding from another great American fencer, Sharon Everson. Eventually, she became the head coach there. She holds many titles and honors, perhaps the greatest one being fencing legend, with a capital F and L. Listen as Dr. Franke explains the need for more fencing exposure for inner-city youth. She'll explain how training for the Olympics back then differed from today. You'll hear what she looks for in a recruit and her vision for a college-level fencing team. She'll also give advice on how an athlete should choose which college to attend. And she'll regale you with stories from driving through the blizzard at the Richmond NAC with her team, as well as tell you their favorite part about traveling together. This is an interview you do not want to miss. 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Saber Coach Kate podcast. I have an extremely special guest with me here today, fencing legend Dr. Nikki Franke, who is the fencing coach at Temple University. Dr. Franke, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, what was life for you like growing up back in the 1950s and 60s in New York City? What was the city like at that time?
Well, I grew up in Harlem, very close-knit community. Everybody, all our neighbors, everybody knew everybody. My grandmother was kind of the keeper of the block in a way. But it was a lot of fun as a kid growing up. I had one older brother, and I was raised primarily by my mother and my grandmother. My father passed away when I was 5, and it was we were poor, but we didn't know it. We had everything that we needed, and had lots of kids on the block and lots of friends. So.
Well, I'm from Iowa, and I just can't imagine growing up in that big of a city. I grew up on a farm, but, it was one of the larger cities in Iowa. But, when I think New York City, I just think all those super high-rise buildings and all those people crammed into one space. And
well, we were in a sixth floor apartment building. And so it wasn't, all the houses on the block were like that. And so they weren't high rises, but they were, there were a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that made it kind of cool too.
Well, when I got the chance to visit, what I really enjoyed was the diversity. That was the one thing about growing up in Iowa. Everybody's pretty much the same. And I really enjoyed walking down the street and, oh, look, there's Little Italy and there's some guy speaking Polish and, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you get exposed to a lot, which is a very good thing.
Mm-hmm. And this surprised me. With your history in fencing, I learned that you started fencing as a senior in high school. So that's pretty late, actually, for what you've been able to accomplish in fencing. You must have been doing something athletically before then. So talk to me about your activities in high school and maybe even before that.
Well, before that, actually, I was, I guess when I was around junior high school age, I actually had 2 back surgeries. Spinal fusions for scoliosis, and so I was actually out of school for a year, where I had a home teacher, which they probably don't do anymore, but they did back then. And so when I went back to school, I went back to junior high school in in Washington Heights, which was not my neighborhood high school, but was one that the home teacher had recommended and got me into. In high school, I was involved in all kinds of sports. I was always involved in some way. We had what they call the Leaders Club, which were all the best athletes in the school. They had their own gym class. And then you spent one period assisting the gym teachers in another class. And so I was always involved in sports, always enjoyed sports. In high school, I was on the tennis team. I was also on the basketball team. And then my senior year, we got a new teacher, and she came in and introduced fencing to the school. And it sounded pretty cool. And growing up in Harlem, you never heard about fencing. You didn't know anything about fencing. But it sounded cool, and it was something else to try. And that's how I started, just purely by chance with this new teacher that came my senior year of high school.
That's really interesting. What was your favorite sport to do? Or did you just like them all?
I like both tennis and basketball. I like both of them, probably equally. Yeah. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of camaraderie. And being in the leaders, my senior year, I was the president of the Leaders Club, and so you really, had a lot of good athletes that you interacted with.
Sure. What was it that you enjoyed most about fencing, and what led you to really start getting into it?
It was just the challenge of it. The old cliche of a physical game of chess was very true, and that intrigued me. Being able to process, adjust, analyze, and then act it out physically was something that I really enjoyed. That challenge, to be able to try to do that and to learn. And I was very fortunate in the people that I met during that time.
So was that an aspect of sport that you hadn't gotten up till the point when you started fencing? Like, wouldn't there be some sort of tactics or mental aspect of the game in, say, tennis or basketball? I mean, what was it that made fencing different?
I just think the one-on-one, which you have in tennis also, but it's not nearly the combative kind of, right there. And so it was just, as I said, primarily it was just something different to try, and I found I liked it.
And you probably fenced foil, I imagine, because that was the only weapon that women were allowed to fence back in the day.
Right. We were much too fragile to do any of those other weapons. Epées were too heavy for women. Saber was too brutal for women. So,
That just cracks me up now.
Well, basketball, we could only do 3 dribbles, and then you had to pass the ball because you couldn't run the whole court. That was much too stressful.
No kidding.
So, I didn't know 3
that.
bounces, 3 dribbles was all you could do, and then you had to pass. There was one person that was the rover, so only one person on each team was allowed to go court to court, end to end. Everyone else had to pass the ball after 3 dribbles.
Oh my gosh.
That's how old I am. No, well, don't that.
Wow. And were the rules in tennis the same?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe the net was a little lower or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, they were the same.
Okay. If you started fencing now, which weapon would you choose and why?
I would still choose foil. I love foil. I just love the precision of it, and I just still find it the most interesting weapon for me.
Okay, but you coach all 3, right?
No, I just coach foil.
Okay.
I just coach foil. Josh Herring coaches out saber, and we've had this year Melissa Forsythe is doing our epee, working with our epee team.
Got it. Okay. Well, we'll chat about them in a little bit.
Okay.
And then after high school, you attended Brooklyn College because you heard they had a good fencing coach. So obviously you really liked this sport and wanted to continue. And I believe her name was Denise O'Connor.
Right.
So what can you tell me about her and her impact on your fencing?
I was, fencing as I tell people, fencing changed my life from the very beginning. I originally was going to go to City College, which was near where I grew up, where my brother had gone or was going. And that was always where I was going to go. And I was at a fencing tournament, and I met a woman named Ellen Jacobs, who was on the Brooklyn College team. And when I told her I was going to City College, she said, "Oh, no, you should come to Brooklyn. We have a really good fencing team and a good fencing coach." And I went, "Oh, okay." I was pretty easygoing back then, as you could tell. And so I was like, from that moment, fencing really changed the direction of my life. And so I applied to Brooklyn College and was accepted, because at part of city universities, you had a application process. And so I ended up going to Brooklyn because of fencing instead of going to City College. And Denise was a very big influence has been a very big influence in my life. She is a fabulous woman. She was a role model for me, both as a person and as a coach. And she helped me really learn to love the sport, because she was very passionate about it. She kind of took care of all of her fencers. We were Denise's kids, and kind of everybody knew Denise. And she was an Olympian herself. And she was is a great person and a very caring person, was always encouraging. And, having been an Olympian, that was pretty neat. And we had the pleasure of both being on the 76 team together, which was extremely unique. I was the youngest one on the team at that time, and she was the oldest.
Wow.
And, but it was pretty cool being on the team with your coach.
How did that change your relationship at all? Like, instead of student coach, to have to suddenly be her teammate?
In some ways it did. I'll never forget the first time I actually beat her at a tournament, because we now were competitors.
Sure.
And it was like, you didn't know whether to be happy, whether what do you do now? I just kind of stood there, and I think she came over and gave me a big hug or something, but it was like the weirdest feeling, because you just beat your coach and you can't be happy about that. And so she made it, she helped ease the tension of the situation, to say, but that's the kind of person she was, and what I learned from her as a coach, just truly just caring about your athletes and wanting the best for them. And she always that's the way she always was. And it was really neat having her as a coach.
She sounds like a great person.
Yeah, she is. She still is involved in fencing, still involved with the NIWFA up until this year.
Wow.
So, it's really, and they have a tournament in New Jersey named after her. And so it's cool, a high school tournament.
Wow, that's really great. Eventually, you became an All-American and, like you've mentioned, an Olympian. So talk about your life as an athlete. That's something I'll never get to experience. I mean, I'll never get to be an Olympian because I started pretty late. So I'm always curious about what it's like to train at that level.
I think back when I was competing, it was very different from the training now. When I graduated, when I was at Brooklyn College, I mean, we practiced, I think, 3 days a week. For a couple of hours, and went to tournaments and so forth. And that was the norm back then. Now, if my team wanted to practice 3 days a week, I'd look at them like they had three heads. And, it was like, excuse me. And so it was a very different level, or different intensity. Maybe that's the word. A different intensity back then. With the improvement in, American fencing now, it's much different than it was. I get freshmen who have already fenced for 10 years, where when I fenced, it wasn't unusual to find fencers who just started in college and were just exposed to it in college. And so, my life then was, if you think about it, when I graduated and came to Temple, I was training, at the club in Philadelphia. I was coaching the team at Temple. I was teaching 2 fencing classes. I was teaching a public health class, and I was taking 3 graduate classes.
Wow.
And that was my life,
I'm tired just thinking about all that.
but that was the norm for me, and that was, I think it was very good in a way, because it really helped keep a balance in my life, and that's really important to me, that no one thing outweighed the others. It was just a constant balancing act. I knew I wanted to finish graduate school. I knew I wanted to train. I knew I wanted to teach. And so, it was just and have, that was kind of the balance that was important, and I think helped me to be successful in that, all my eggs weren't in one basket. As I said, just a few, at that time, just a few of the top fences came out of private clubs. A lot of them came out of colleges, and so, and high school teams. And so there was a much more level playing field. It's very different today.
And when you say that you were training 3 days a week, was that fencing specific only, or were you doing like running and weightlifting? And okay, I think I know the answer to that one.
Yeah, back then it was just fencing.
Okay.
That's what you did. There was no weight training. There was no, conditioning per se. It was you just came and you fenced, and you got lessons from the coach.
Right, and then probably attended competition and all that kind of stuff too.
Right.
Yeah. And in your opinion, is it necessary to have trained and competed at the highest levels in order to be able to coach high-level athletes?
No, I don't think so at all. I think it helps having been in the situation yourself and knowing from the other side, but it's not necessary. I've seen some very, very good coaches who were not high elite athletes, but they have an outstanding understanding of the game, and that's what's important. And so there are really good athletes who probably are not very good coaches, and vice versa. So there really has to be that understanding and that desire to want to work with young people and to help them develop, not just as fencers but as human beings.
You've mentioned a couple of your past coaches, but can you talk about some of your past teammates?
Yeah, Ellen Jacobs, as I said, was the first person that was influential and convinced me to go to Brooklyn College. When I got there, Sharon Everson, who everyone knows, was on the team, and Sharon and I have been friends ever since college. And so she, of course, was involved in fencing. When I came to Philadelphia, I really didn't know much about the fencing club scene in Philadelphia, and I didn't have any money. I was a wonderful graduate assistant, and I was earning, I think, like $3,000 a year, and I thought I was quite rich at that time, which I was not. But definitely didn't have money to go to a club. And there was another graduate assistant named Rick Maxwell. And Rick was at Temple doing graduate work and was a saber fencer. And he was like, oh, you need to come down to Cesar's club. And I'm like, oh, I can't go to the club. I don't really have the money to join the club or whatever. He says, oh, just come meet him. Let's talk with him and see what what you can work out. And so Rick actually was the one who convinced me to go down to Cesar's club. And that, again, was one of the best decisions I ever made. I met Maestro Cesar, who was a wonderful person and an outstanding coach. He was coaching, he had his club he was a Penn coach, and he had a club at Penn. And so I went down there, and he saw me fence, and he says, you come and fence, we will work it out. And so he never charged me initially, but was willing to work with me. And that was, just a wonderful blessing. And he, like I said, was just a wonderful man and really helped me improve so much as a fencer. And he and Denise are the only two coaches I ever had. And he coached me until I stopped competing in 1980.
Where was he from?
Hungarian. He was born in Transylvania.
No kidding.
Which always was a joke to me, because I just imagined, Transylvania and okay. But yes, he was Hungarian, and he was a great Hungarian coach, and he was an Olympic coach for the U.S. and one of the best coaches at Penn.
Wow.
His name was Lajos Cesar.
You've talked about becoming an Olympian. Actually, you qualified twice. Would you consider that your greatest fencing accomplishment, or do you have something else in mind?
I think there were three that come to mind. I worked fencing under Cesar with Sharon and Jeanette Faulkner. Jeanette Starks Faulkner, who was also a Brooklyn College graduate, and a woman named Sally Emery. We won the team championship several times under Cesar, women's foil championship. Becoming an Olympian, of course, was I won't say it was a dream come true, because I never dreamed of being an Olympian. I never, woke up saying, "Oh, I want to be an Olympian one day." Life's been very funny for me, and it's kind of just been blessing after blessing, and it's just kind of things have occurred and happened in my life that have just been pretty fantastic. I just fenced because I loved fencing, and I was kind of like, well, we'll see where it takes you, but I didn't have, specific goals in mind. So making the Olympic team was a fantastic experience. In '76 up in Montreal, where my entire family could come, my husband, my mom, my grandmother, everybody. So that was pretty cool. And then also, I think the other accomplishment that I'm very proud of is 1992, the Temple won the women's foil team event at the NCAA's, and with a very young team, and I was very, very proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly. So you talked about qualifying for the Montreal Olympics, where your family got to go, and then you also qualified for the Olympics in 1980, but then we boycotted.
Right.
So what was that like, to not be able to go, even though you earned your way there?
It was very disappointing. It was very frustrating. I knew at that point that probably was going to be my last team, and I knew that even though it was a political statement, it really wasn't going to change anything that was going on in Afghanistan, and we see that even today, how many years later. And so it was really, I felt, a political stand using the athletes who had committed and sacrificed 4 years of their lives to make this team. We weren't getting any funding at that point. So this was, we, were self-funded, sacrificing jobs, family, everything else to make the team. And then to have one person take that away when you had earned it over the 4 years was very, very disappointing. Mm-hmm. And really, especially even with the political climate today, I think that was the one thing that shouldn't be in the Olympics is the politics. But it's hard to get politics out of anything, especially today.
Well, that's what I always think of when I think of the Olympics. It's all of those athletes living together for several weeks and transcending borders and politics and all that. And it's...
Once you get there, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And
to have that taken away is really, really sad.
Yeah. Once you get there, I mean, the meeting people and interacting with people from all over the world just makes you a better human being, because you get to interact and learn about different worldviews and different ways of looking at things. And it was just a great experience. And, I'll never forget it.
After you got your bachelor's degree, you were convinced to attend Temple University as a grad student so that you could teach the fencing class there. I thought that was really interesting how they didn't have a coach. It just was pretty much student-led. And so it sounds like you got roped into that. And so once again, your life, was guided by some, unforeseen force. And then you went off to Temple. So talk about that. I imagine you didn't have a lot of coaching training. So how did you know what to do?
That was my question. Brooklyn College had a series of students who had graduated Brooklyn and gone there to get their master's. And so every 2 years, someone was graduating, and it was the next person. And so they were always looking for a new graduate assistant to teach the fencing classes. And there wasn't a lot of fencing in Philadelphia. So we had this pipeline, or Denise O'Connor had this pipeline to Temple and get their master's. Well, my career plan had always been to teach high school. I majored, my undergraduate degree was in health and physical education, although I had decided my senior year to really focus more on health and public health. And so to teach school in New York, you have 5 years to get your master's. Well, so Denise and my mother conspired quite diligently, as I learned later, to get me to go to Temple because Sharon was the graduate assistant that was there, and she was graduating. And so they needed someone to come down and teach the fencing classes. And so Denise and my mother thought it was a great idea.
Didn't matter what you thought, right?
Did not matter what I thought at all. I did not have very many options. It was like, here's what you're going to do next. And you go, yes, Miss O'Connor. And you just do whatever she says, because that's how strong, she's a very strong personality. And so, like I said, there had been a series of Brooklyn College graduates who had gone to Temple. Sharon was about to graduate, and so they needed someone to replace her who was knowledgeable enough to teach the classes. And there was a fencing club that she ran there. So there was a men's team at Temple, but there was only a women's club. And so when she graduated, I ended up taking her place and became the TA, the grad assistant teaching the fencing classes, having just graduated college with absolutely no coaching experience whatsoever. I was kind of like, all right, I just graduated. How am I going to teach college students? And Denise and Sharon assured me that if I stayed at least 1 week ahead in my lesson plans, I would be okay, but they knew nothing about fencing, and I did. So that was the advantage. And so with using Denise as a role model and how she had run things and Sharon's lesson plans, they became essential to me being able to manage being a college teacher when I had just graduated.
Wow. I imagine that lesson plan book was like, so it was like gold, you know?
Absolutely.
Don't lose that thing.
Absolutely. And someone had passed it down to Sharon. And so, we just kept it going. So, and when I finished, Jeanette was graduating, and so Jeanette came, and Jeanette Starks Faulkner, and so she became the graduate assistant, and actually was my assistant coach for a couple of years. So,
wow, I love how that whole pipeline included all of you. That's really neat.
Right, and Zoila Palacio also later on came, and she was a graduate student and ended up staying and coaching with me for I think 13, 14 years.
Wow.
And so, that Brooklyn College pipeline was pretty strong.
And did you not give Jeanette any more option than you had?
That was Denise. As I said, you just go, yes, Miss O'Connor, and you do whatever she says. So.
And have you had any other formal coaching training?
No.
No, just learned by doing.
Learn by doing, learn by observing. As I said, I've been very fortunate to have two outstanding coaches, and I've learned so much from them. My short Shizar, a little aside if you have time, my short Shizar used to teach a kids class. And, he was this great coach. And when I first came to Temple and I was teaching, I said, well, I'll go down on Saturday morning and watch him teach the children's class. And so I went down one Saturday, trying to get some tips. And I saw him teach his class, and these kids were god awful. They really were awful. And I'm like, all right, maybe it's just a bad day. So I go back the next week, and they're still awful. And eventually I got up enough nerve to ask him, well, the kids don't seem to be very skilled, and you don't seem to be really focusing on, what is your focus when you're teaching them, And it's something that I've just lived by and has been so key to my philosophy. He says, when they are young, and I think a lot of coaches need to understand this, when they are young, you must teach them to love the sport. When they get older, we can teach technique. And he had several Olympians come out of his program. But he said, when they're young, you have to teach them to love the sport and to have passion for it. And I never forgot that. And it was so true. You know, when they get older, you can teach them how to parry four, you know, but if they hate every time they come to the gym, that's not a good situation.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just remember that his philosophy about that.
You mentioned that at Temple there wasn't a women's fencing team. There was only a club. So talk to me about the genesis of starting that fencing team.
Again, purely by chance. All I had known was a team. All I had known was Brooklyn College, and they had a team. And I went to Temple, and they had a men's team, but they didn't have a women's team. The women were a club. At that time, women's and men's athletics were totally separate at Temple. Men's athletics was a typical athletic department reported to the president. The women's athletics department was part of the College of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. So there was very much of an educational focus for the women's programs as opposed to the hierarchy of a typical men's athletics program. And so the women had not just a basketball team and a tennis team, but they had a bowling team, they had a badminton team. It was serving students. If there was an interest on the part of students, then they tried to provide a team for them. And so I went to the women's athletic director at that time, and I asked her, well, why don't we have a women's fencing team? And she basically said, well, I don't know, should we? And I said, yes. And she said, oh, okay. And that was it.
As
it was
easy
just,
as that.
As easy as that, just totally naive. This person who just graduated from college, who had no coaching experience, whatever, now had the opportunity, and I will forever be thankful to Temple to give me an opportunity to coach a Division I fencing program with absolutely no experience and to start it up.
Wow.
And so it was just totally naivety on my part and openness on Temple's part and on the athletic director. Her name was Barbara Lockhart, to say, yeah, if there's a student interest in this, then we'll do it. You know, we're here to serve our students.
Wow.
So no fancy story. That's the God honest truth of how it happened. I just didn't know any better.
Well, it just goes to show that sometimes all you have to do to achieve greatness is just ask or just try.
Yeah, ask but have the opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's the key. There's many places would never have given me that opportunity. And opportunity is so key. And that's, you know, you can try, but if you're not given exposed or given the opportunity, it doesn't happen. So I kudos to Temple for that.
And you've been at Temple for a little while now, enough to rack up 800 wins. So congratulations on that. I think that was in February of this year. So I imagine y'all have an even better record than that at this point. But where do you want the program to go next? And are there, you know, what goals do you have left to achieve in your program?
Well, I think I just want the team to continue to be one of the top women's teams in the country. We're a top 10 team, trying our very best to become a top 5 team. And so that is one of the goals that we have as a team, not just my goal, but it's a team's goal. I want to continue to give young women the opportunity to be part of a true team, which I think is something that's very special. I'm very team-oriented, and I think being a part of a team is a very special, unique experience in college. And it's, we're very successful, I think, because we work very hard, but also, you know, the girls all care about each other. Genuinely care about each other and want the best for each other. And that's the type of atmosphere we try to create. That is what is expected. And so not every group of people who compete together are a team, if you understand what I'm saying. but we really stress being a team and being connected and being united. And that's very important to me, in trying to bring the best out of each of the individuals that are part of the team.
How do you create that team environment for a sport that is very individual?
Yeah. And it's sometimes very difficult, especially when you have freshmen coming in who have never been part of a team, who have only been involved in club fencing and individual fencing. It's a learning process. It's something that we talk about. It's something that hopefully the upperclassmen on the team help to let them understand what the norms are. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. But it's something that everyone can learn if they want to. And to me, it just makes it so much more fun, being part of something and knowing that what you do matters and other people are depending on you just like you're depending on other people. And so, yes, it's an individual sport. When you're out on that strip, it's all you. But to feel that support behind you and people really wanting you to succeed, and not being jealous of your success, is something, like I said, that we talk about and we live by example.
As a college coach, what do you look for when you're recruiting for your program?
Well, first and foremost, we're looking for good students academically, and students who really value the importance of a good education. Because that's why you're there. You're there to get a good education.
Yeah, Temple's a really good school.
Fencing just makes it a lot more fun. And as I tell the girls, 10 years from now, they're not going to remember the A they got in calculus or in physics, but they'll remember that crazy snowstorm last January going to the NAC in Virginia Beach. They'll remember that for the rest of their lives. And so will I, as a matter of fact, as we were driving. But, those are the things, the friends that they make. So many of our alums are still great friends to this day who fenced, 30 years ago and still are the best of friends and come back and help us with our tournament and volunteer. And, it's just those friendships that you develop are just really important. So I look for fencers that want to be part of a team, want to be part of something, who are good students, who value education, and have sound fundamental skills. They don't have to be, Olympians at this point, but if they have good, strong skills, if they are athletic, if they have a passion for fencing and are open to listening and being coached, those are the things that are really important. If they think they know more than I do, that's great, and they probably need to find some place where they can exhibit that. But it's we're going to always try to do the best we can for each of our young women, but they have to be open to realizing that every coach is different, and there's no right. My feeling is there's no right or wrong way to do things. There are some ways that are better, and so but they were just different ways. And so if they're open to trying different things, that's very important. But most importantly, just they want to be part of a team, part of something, and they have to. I want them to love fencing to do it because they really have a passion for it.
What advice do you have for high school students who are looking to fence in college?
I think the best advice is you have to find the best fit for you, and know what you're looking for. Going out and visiting schools, talking to not just coaches, but talking to the athletes, talking to professors or advisors, getting a sense of what life is like at that particular school is very important because, even with my own children who both were athletes, college athletes, Division I, it was like, okay, if you couldn't do your sport, is this a place that you still would want to be? Mm-hmm. And so they have to find the right school. And then fencing becomes the second part of adding to that. So it might narrow your list of this is what I want to study, and these are the schools that have that major and also have fencing. So that's nice. Now you have a narrow list, but you have to go and experience the campus and see just what feels right. Mm-hmm. Because, and what coaching philosophy and team philosophy feels right. Because a school may have a big name, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily the best fit for you. And what do you want? How much do you want to participate? How small or big a team do you want to be on? Those are the kinds of questions that you don't really know the answers to until you start investigating and talking with people.
As a head coach, what do you look for in your assistant coaches? Willingness to be there.
To be there, of course, to be knowledgeable in their weapon, but also to be passionate. Again, keep going back to that, but that's so important to me. Someone who doesn't see it as a job, but sees it as something that they just want to do. Because they love doing it. They love working, someone who loves working with young people, loves helping them to develop. If you think about a college coach, you have these teenagers that come into your program as freshmen, and 4 years later you're standing there and you're seeing these young women who are about to go out into the world, and you've had to understand the influence as a coach that you've had on those very important years of their lives is really important, and you have to want to be a part of that, and to appreciate that. And so being able to have assistant coaches that feel that same way, who want to interact with young people, who want to help them grow and mature, who are well skilled, and who are good team players, because as coaches we're a team also.
Right. You mentioned you're traveling to Virginia Beach. What is it like to travel with the whole team to competitions?
Oh, it's a blast. We have a lot of fun. I think for the team, the most important thing is in traveling is where we're going to eat. That's very important to them. They love food and they love to eat, and we always eat as a team. We go out together as a team and eat. And so our team is very close. They get along, very well, even for a bunch of women. And they enjoy, I think, getting out of the norm of the college schedule and being able to go to different places and compete together, and going out together.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And then there are the adventures, like when there's a lot of snow and...
I will never do that again.
Never say never.
Oh, no, I mean never. We tried to leave early to beat the storm, and we ran right into it. And,
oh, no.
Oh, my God. But anyway.
Oh, all right. You have won numerous awards, including the USFCA Coach of the Year 4 times. You've been inducted into the Women's Sports Foundation's International Sports Hall of Fame, U.S. Fencing's Hall of Fame, the Brooklyn College Hall of Fame, and Temple University Athletics Hall of Fame. Which of these honors, or maybe there's something else, means the most to you, and why?
Kate, they're all important to me, and they're all meaningful because they all represent different phases of my career. And it's been such an honor to be recognized by so many different organizations for doing something that I just love doing. And so whether it's in my early coaching years or my involvement in the community, what I was able to do as an athlete myself in college, and for Temple to recognize me for my coaching, like I said, these are all different aspects of who I am as a person. And so not many people, I think, get to be honored for the different phases of their life, their professional life. And so that's what I appreciate the most. And it just shows you, what happens when you stick around long enough.
Yeah, it's true. The longer you're there, then the more opportunities you have. That's true.
But you have to do something with those opportunities.
That's just it. Now, talk about the Black Women in Sport Foundation that you co-founded with Tina Sloan Green, Alpha Alexander, and Linda Green. What is its mission and what has it accomplished?
The Black Women in Sport Foundation really developed out of a need that we saw. We were all at Temple at one point and had been going to different Women's Sports Foundation conferences and different kinds of workshops, and realizing that we weren't seeing a lot of focus on some of the unique issues of women of color in athletics, be it as an athlete, as a coach, as an administrator, as a business person. And so, we, along with a faculty member, Carol Oglesby, who was very instrumental in the Women's Sports Foundation, we saw a need to start doing our own conferences where we could focus on some of those issues. And so out of those conferences, we were able to really mentor and interact with a lot of women of color who were involved in different aspects of sport on a professional level. And then we also do a lot of work in the community. And so we have a lot of work with a lot of after school programs. We have worked with thousands of young women of color. And our major mission is to expose them to non-traditional sports. Like myself, it's all about opportunity. And kids don't know, and as adults, we don't know what someone is good at unless we expose them to it and let them try. So kids may tell you, well, I want to play basketball, I want to play football or coaches or administrators at high schools and middle schools may say, well, that's what kids are interested in our neighborhood. And we say, well, you don't know what they're interested in because they haven't been exposed to other things. So we focus on introducing young women of color to non-traditional sports. So we have worked teaching them golf, tennis, lacrosse, field hockey, fencing, all of those different sports. And some of them have gone on to play those sports later on in school and in college because of that exposure. Some of the young women have gone on to coach or be athletic administrators. And so we really have done a lot in not only helping young people be exposed, but also in encouraging them and teaching them about the different aspects of sport that are available for them to get involved in. And it's not just as an athlete, but there are lots of ways you can be involved if you love sports. We were also instrumental, and Tina Sloan Green especially, who was the lacrosse coach at Temple, won 3 NCAA championships at Temple. She was instrumental in getting lacrosse into the middle schools in Philadelphia, which was a major feat. And so now there's a lacrosse program in Philadelphia middle schools.
Oh, wow. Wow. I told you before I started recording all this that I'd done a little bit of research on you, and I found a couple of ESPN articles, which I just think is way cool. I mean, being interviewed for ESPN is any coach's dream. But the article that I found mentioned that you are a fencing legend with a capital F and a capital L. I tend to agree with that, but what does that mean to you? And what are the burdens and joys of being a fencing legend?
Well, I'm not quite sure what that means. I think just having been involved in fencing for almost all of my adult life, really, if you think about it, it's just been the fact that everybody knows me, I guess. When you go somewhere, anything that's involved in fencing, usually there's, the girls on my team hate going anywhere with me because they're always stopping to talk to somebody, or someone's always saying hi, or some outside of fencing, someone will say, oh, I saw someone and I mentioned something about fencing, and they went, oh, do you know Nikki Franke? And so, those kinds of things. So I think it's just a matter of just having been exposed for so long to the sport that a lot of people know me or know my name, although a lot of the young people have no idea who I am anymore.
Well, with this podcast, that's about to change.
Great.
What would you like to see from fencing in the future? What changes would you like to see be made, and what improvements can we make to our sport?
Yeah. I think although we are now exposing young people to the sport much more than when I started, I think we have to be very careful about reverting back to what it used to be, which was a very elitist sport, and that you had to have money in order to in order to succeed. I would like, the USFA to get more involved in grassroots programs, both urban programs, rural programs, which is, again, going back to exposure, for people who may not have the means to pay for a private club, and yet there's a lot of talented kids out there that would benefit from their exposure or being involved in fencing, and fencing would benefit from their involvement. It's a two-way street. And so trying to do more, introducing it into the high schools, and getting more college teams started. I think of things that widen the number of people that become familiar with our sport. It's a great sport, and even though it's hard to understand if you're watching it, it's a sport that really helps kids grow in so many ways. And I think the more we can expose them to it, the better. When I first started, I was very fortunate in being able to get free lessons and so forth. And in college, having an outstanding coach. But I think we have to do more as an organization, as a federation, to broaden that our reach to more than those who can afford it.
Yeah, I've often thought that I would like to do something like that. When we've started our own club, I mean, we have to bring in enough students to help pay the bills.
Sure, reality. Yeah.
But it would be really nice to be able to offer this sport to kids that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. And
Right.
yeah, I think that's an admirable goal.
Yeah, and I think the USFA could do more in that realm, in some startup money or scholarships, kinds of things that they could, possibly raise money for specifically, as a fundraising goal, to be able to provide, scholarships to deserving young people, who are good students and can benefit. So I think there is more we can do. Clubs have to make a living, I understand that. But, if every club could scholarship 2 or 3 young people, you think about that around the country.
Yeah.
And how many kids that would really bring into our sport, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, it sure would. Well, not like this is going to happen anytime soon, but have you thought about life after fencing? I mean, is there life after fencing? Like some mountain retreat, or, go skiing every day, or I don't know what. Do you have any plans for after fencing?
It's really funny because I never had an adult life without fencing. And so I don't know what it would be like to not have it, which is probably one of the reasons I keep doing it. It's just part of my life. Definitely would want to spend more time with family. I have 3 grandchildren, and that would be, they're growing up quickly. Travel a little bit, with my husband, and, I don't think I know how to really relax and do nothing. So I think in some ways I'll always be involved as much as I can, just because that's, I never have not been. And so that's the norm for me.
Well, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our time together. It's been a really enjoyable conversation today. But
I appreciate it.
But we'll finish up this interview with a mixture of famous questions from James Lipton and Marcel Proust. What is your favorite word?
Kindness. Kindness. We don't have enough of it in the world today.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't. That's the 4-letter word I don't let my athletes use. Among other 4-letter words I don't let them.
I was going to ask you.
They don't use any, they better not.
What sound or noise do you love?
Probably ocean waves. Very soothing.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I don't know. Coming from New York, probably car horns.
Yeah. That's a good one. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Maybe being a psychologist, which comes with being a coach sometimes, although my husband says I should have been a lawyer.
What profession would you not like to do?
Be a politician.
Where would you like to live?
No specific place as long as it's near family.
Okay. What do you value most in your friends?
Honesty.
Who is your hero?
I don't think about that too often, but two people that I definitely admire, have always admired from a young age, was actress Cicely Tyson and singer Nina Simone. And I've admired them because they were women before their times, and they were very strong women of principle. And they didn't let their profession adjust their values and their principles. And I've always admired that. There were things they just wouldn't do, even though it meant they couldn't get jobs, because they had a very strong sense of value.
And what is your motto?
I think it's one that I learned from my grandmother, and I've tried to, even when I was teaching, as you know, I taught public health for about 30 years at Temple after I got my doctorate. And it's kind of, especially working in the public health field, teaching our students and just realizing that everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter what their circumstance or their situation. Everyone should be able to have dignity and be respected.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thanks for asking me to do this. It's been fun. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I'm sure I'll see you at future NACs.
For sure. Oh, take care, Kate. Thanks again.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
A big thank you to my friend and teammate Tony Escueda for creating the theme music for this podcast. Also thanks to my wonderful husband, David Sierra, who supports me in all of my crazy endeavors. And a big thank you to everybody out there who listens either to the single episode or as a regular listener to this podcast. I really appreciate you, and I certainly wouldn't be doing this if there weren't any people who download or listen to these interviews. You can find me on Facebook at SaberCoachKate. You can find me on my blog, sabercoachkate.wordpress.com. You can find me on YouTube, on Spotify, and various other places around the internet. If you have any suggestions or comments, or if there's anyone that you'd like me to try to get an interview with, please contact me at sabercoachkate@gmail.com.